Hey guys, Tactics here with another beta roundup for this week's changes on the Shadowlands beta. We have a bunch of changes to go over this week, but before jumping in, I just want to quickly remind you guys that our Shadowlands giveaway is ending on October 16th, so you have just over a week to enter for your chance to win, so check out that gleam.io link in the description. With that said, let's take a look at the October dev update that we got earlier this week. To give you guys the spark notes, they talked about three main topics: the Maw, Conduits, and classes/covenant balance. For the Maw, they are saying that the content currently there is falling a bit short, so they plan to expand on the gameplay and give players more direction in the future. The Maw's a little bit empty right now, and there's been a lot of feedback on that, so hopefully they're able to improve it to make it kind of what was promised in this big, kind of desolate, scary zone that has some rewards that are worth going to, and it's fun to go to, right? That's the most important thing. Moving on, Conduits, they've gotten rid of the 1 week cooldown. They said that was too restrictive, and they're instead moving to this new thing called Conduit Energy. So pretty much you're going to start with 10 Conduit Energy. You will gain 1 per day, or you will also gain 1 when you add a new Conduit to your collection up to the cap of 10. Now you use this energy anytime you socket a Conduit into your Soulbind. So pretty much you just develop this new currency to kind of deal with this. It's definitely better than the 1 week cooldown, but I'm still a bit confused as to why they would put more dev time into coming up with and then implementing a new restrictive system rather than just removing the restrictions that many players seem to be having a problem with. They also did briefly talk about covenant balance and class balance, and basically they're just saying that they're continuing to iterate on these changes and tune any outlier abilities or classes or covenants. To go alongside these changes, they also had a Conduit blue post earlier today. Basically what they've done now is they've reduced the number of potency slots per soulbind down from 3 to 2. So they are replacing those soulbind slots with either an endurance or finesse slot. The reasoning behind this is because potency conduits are more spec specific, so using the new currency system it would be a lot harder for players to actually be able to swap around all those different conduits. So they're basically saying that it's more easy for players to justify using an endurance or finesse socket on an off spec than it is compared to a potency socket. Basically what they're doing here is opting to reduce the power of this current system so that it better fits with the new conduit currency restrictions, rather than give players more freedom using the current system. I've already mentioned my opinion on it, so I won't repeat it, but it's confusing to me to say the least. Next, we have some changes that hunters are very happy about. So Hunter's Mark has the 5% bonus damage component removed. While this is a nerf looking at it, a lot of hunters are happy with it because it's kind of annoying to have to constantly set up and use this ability that's on the GCD every pack in Mythic Plus, or as much as you can in Mythic Plus, or on bosses. And so it just kind of removes that setup for them, and a lot of people are happy because it keeps its PvP and utility ability rather than just being something that they need to press to set up their rotation. And from there, we have an absolutely crazy amount of legendary changes alongside a few covenant changes. So I'm going to rifle through these real quick, starting with Frost Death Knights. So Biting Cold had its Remorseless Winter damage increased from 15% to 25%. Kultira's Favor had the Obliterate damage reduced from 10% to 5%, and they reduced the chance to refund runes from 15% to 12%. Rage of the Frozen Champion had the Obliterate trigger chance reduced from 15% to 10%, and the Runic Power generation reduced from 8 to 6. For Unholy, they now had Deadliest Coil increase the duration of Dark Transformation by 1 second rather than 2 seconds. They also had the Death Certainty damage increased on Deathstrike and Death Coil to 20% from 10%. Finally, they had Frenzied Monstrosity nerfed, deal only 12% additional damage down from 20%. Moving on, they have some Blood Death Knight changes as well. So the Pheromones legendary had its haste reduced from 10% to 5% while standing in Death and Decay, and the Kyrian Covenant ability for all Death Knights got about a 10% damage hit, but it also got a Conduit change. So the Conduit now, instead of giving it a 2% chance to spread to nearby enemies, it now has its duration increased and damage increased. So overall, when you're using that Conduit, you're actually going to get about the same damage at lower Conduit levels and actually higher damage at higher Conduit levels. Moving on to Druids. We got Adaptive Swarm. The Necrolord ability now is affected by the Balanced Druid damage aura. So it just gets a flat 22% additional damage when used by Balanced Druids, which makes it more, maybe more wanted by them. Currently they don't really want it at all, so maybe this will change that. The Ravenous Frenzy ability from Venthyr has also been moved to 2 seconds idle in order for it to overcome you, rather than 1.5 seconds idle. Again, still not sure why this even has a penalty on it, but the penalty has been reduced. For Hunters, alongside that Hunter's Mark change, they have their Dire Command legendary, now has a 15% chance, up from 10% chance to summon a Dire Beast. Flamewaker's Cobra Sting now has a 15% chance to make your next kill command consume no focus, up from 10%. And Rylax Stalker's Piercing Fangs has been nerfed to only increase your pet's critical strike damage during Bestial Wrath by 15%, down from 30%. For Marksmanship, the Secrets of the Unblinking Vigil has been changed a little bit. So Trick Shots now has a 50% chance to refund a charged range shot and cause it to not consume any focus. Serpent Stalker's Trickery was also changed, now only affecting 2 enemies with Chimera Shot, down from 3. Moving on to Survival, they have Butcher's Bone Fragment was changed, so each stack now is a 15% damage increase, but it only goes up to 6 stacks, so this will cap out at 90% rather than 100%. Latent Poison Injectors also got a buff, up from 13% attack power scaling per stack from 10%, so that's a decent buff there. Wildfire Cluster got a nerf, on the other hand, down from 33% attack power scaling to 20%. When it comes to the general effects, Call of the Wild got a buff. The cooldown of all your aspects, a Coordinated Assault, True Shot, are reduced by 35% now, up from 25%. Nestingwary's Trapping Apparatus also now grants 45 focus, up from 25, and the Soulforge Embers was nerfed again, down to 150% attack power scaling from 210. Going to Mages, they saw a bunch of changes as well. Arcane Bombardment for Arcane causes Barrage to now deal 80% damage in execute range, up from 40%. Arcane Harmony, each arcane missile that hits an enemy increases the damage of your next Arcane Barrage by 6%, stacking up to 100 times. For Siphon Storm, Evocation now only grants 1 arcane charge, down from 2, and only increases intellect by 1% per second, down from 2. Temporal Warp got a buff, up to 25% haste from 15 for 30 seconds, up from 20. Next we have some fire stuff. So Molten Skyfall now requires 40 fireballs or pyroblasts before triggering a meteor, up from 30, so pretty big increase there. Sun King's Blessing also now requires 16 hot streaks, up from 6, and combustion only lasts for 4 seconds, down from 6 seconds. Next, Cold Front now requires 90 frostbolts or flurries to call down a frozen orb toward your target. Hitting enemy players counts as double still, but that's a huge increase on that one. Next we have Freezing Winds, which now gives you 3 seconds of Fingers of Frost when Frozen Orb is active, but no longer gives you Frozen Orb cooldown reduction. Finally, for general things, we have the Expanded Potential, had its procs per minute reduced from 3 to 1. For Grizzly Icicle, we now no longer have frost damage affected by the damage increase, so this makes it much worse for frost mages. And then we also have Triune Ward, which is given a 10% effectiveness buff, so your absorb shields are now 50% effective, up from 40%. Moving on to Monks, they saw some changes as well to legendaries. The Charred Passions legendary is up to 70% additional damage from 30%. Cowhouse Might has been reduced to 250% normal damage from 300% normal damage of Tiger Palm, and Stormstout's Last Keg has Cake Smash now only dealing 15% additional damage from 30%. This is on top of that Cake Smash nerf from last week, if you guys remember. They gotta change to Kiefer's Skyreach as well, so Tiger's Palm now gives you a 30% increased critical strike chance for 6 seconds, up from 25%, but can only be applied to the same target once per minute. Last Emperor's Capacitator was also nerfed down to 55% per stack from 100% per stack. Monks also saw a buff to Weapons of Order, giving it better spell power scaling, up to 40% from 30%. For general legendaries, Fatal Touch now reduces the cooldown of Touch of Death by 120 seconds, so 2 minutes, up from 1 minute. And Invoker's Delight now gives you 20% haste for 20 seconds when summoning your Celestial, up from 12% for 15 seconds. For Paladins, they saw a nerf to their Necrolord Conduit, Vanquisher's Hammer. The Conduit now only increases its damage by 50% instead of 100%, so a pretty sizable nerf there. Moving on to Priest, we saw a change to Clarity of Mind. Spirit Shell now increases the duration of active atonements by 4 seconds and reduces the mana cost of your damaging spells by 30%. Then during Rapture, your Power Word Shield costs 20% less mana, and applies for 6 seconds longer. Moving on to some talent changes for Shadow Priest, we have Death and Madness now giving you 7 seconds to kill a target affected by Shadow or Death from 6 seconds. And we saw a little change to Hungering Void, so now any Void Bolt you cast on the target makes that target vulnerable for 6 seconds, increases your damage to them by 10%, and any Void Bolt you cast on that target that's already vulnerable extends your Void form by 1 second or 2 seconds if it's a crit. From there, we also saw Eternal Call of the Void have its procs per minute reduced from 2 to 1. We saw a sizable nerf to Shadow Flame Prism for Shadow Priests from 300% spell power scaling down to 120%. And we also saw the duration increase only 1 second now from 1.5. Moving on to Rogues, a bunch more legendary changes and a change to Flagellation. So, for legendaries, Dashing Scoundrel and Venom only increases your critical strike chance of poisons by 8% from 30% and only generates 1 energy on crits from 2. You also have Zoldyck Insignia, which your poisons and bleeds now deal 20% increased damage in execute range instead of 30%. For Outlaw, Celerity only has Adrenaline Rush increase your damage by 5%, down from 15%. And Slice and Dice only has a chance to grant Adrenaline Rush for 3 seconds, down from 4 seconds. For Concealed Blunderbuss, Sinister Strike only has a 30% chance now to make your next pistol shot fire 2 additional times, down from 33% chance to fire 3 additional times. We also saw a nerf to Greenskin's Wickers, where Between the Eyes has a 20% chance per combo point to increase your pistol shot damage by 120%, down from 200%. There's also a significant nerf to Guile Charm, where Sinister Strike now gradually increases your damage up to 8%, down from 30%, or 10 seconds, down from 15 seconds. Moving on to Subtlety, this move Black Powder, it's just Shadow Vault. They've just changed how it looks now, and they've gotten rid of the kind of jump up in the air for that animation, so it makes it a little bit easier to use, and the animation has changed. They also have some legendary changes where Akari's Soul Fragment was nerfed again, down from 50% effectiveness to 15%, so it was a pretty big nerf there. Deathly Shadows also now only grants you 15% increased damage for 8 seconds from 10, and the Rotten got changed to give you 3 seconds after activating Symbols of Death. It only causes Backstab to grant 3 additional combo points. So the new Flagellation now has a 5-second cooldown from 25 seconds. You will still lash the target for 3 times and put a 45-second debuff on them. You'll lash them again for each combo point spent while they have that debuff. When you reactivate this ability, you now get a haste buff based on the number of stacks for 25 seconds. You can get up to 20% haste if you have the 40 stacks, and this is in place of getting 10% mastery. So overall, I think this is definitely a buff to this Venthyr ability. They also got some neutral legendaries change, with Essence of Bloodfang getting a number, which is 100% of your damage dealt, and Invigorating Shadow Dust, reducing the cooldown of your other abilities by 10 seconds down from 15, and Mark of the Master Assassin only giving you the extra critical strike chance for 2 seconds after breaking stealth, down from 5. The Conduit for Flagellation has also been changed, now allowing it to lash 1 additional time and dealing more damage. Finally, we have Warriors, our last class to see legendary changes. Battlelord now gives Slam a 45% chance to reset Mortal Strike cooldown from 30%, and during Blow, makes Mortal Strike have a 12% chance to apply Colossus Smash for 4 seconds, down from 15% for 5 seconds, and Exploiter causes Execute to make the target take 16% more damage from your next Mortal Strike, down from 25%. For Fury, we have Bloodthirst increases your haste by 1% for 8 seconds, stacking up to 4 times, down from 2%, so pretty sizable nerf there. We have Deathmaker, which has Rampage, a 20% chance to apply Siege Breaker, down from 25%. And for Reckless Defense, we saw it now only decreases the cooldown by 2 seconds instead of 3 seconds. For the general legendary Seismic Reverberation, we saw a nerf for it to Arms, dealing only 60% additional damage, and Prot dealing only 30% additional damage. And that covers all the changes in this week's beta build. I know there was a lot of legendary changes there, so thank you guys so much for watching. As always, if you enjoyed this video and are interested in more Warcraft content, feel free to subscribe, check me out on Twitch, or follow me on Twitter. Also, as I mentioned earlier, our Shadowlands giveaway is still going on, so check out the link in the description to enter. Thank you guys once again, and I will see you in the next video.